Owners Off Script. Real owners, real conversations. Supported by SoundGeek.
Welcome to another edition of Owners Off Script. Today, my guest is Reuben Jenkins, founder-director of Cornwall-based Carers Break CIC, and also the organisation's registered manager. Since helping launch the service in 2013, he's built a reputation for combining business leadership with hands-on approach to care, helping shape a service known for innovation, training and support for carers and families across Cornwall.
Aye.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It didn't take me long to write it, but...
No, it took ChatGPT even less.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, yeah.
So, look, we'll make no secret right at the beginning of this, we do know each other quite well. You've been an avid supporter of my business and we've been one of yours. But actually, you've got a heck of a story, which I think I'd like us to talk about today.
Yeah, sure.
The whole purpose of today is there's no scripts and it's just real people, real conversations, right?
Yeah, good.
So that was your intro, but who is Reuben Jenkins?
Okay. So born in Rhondda Valley, South Wales, 1962. So yeah, I'm 63. I know I don't look it, but my parents were lovely people, both passed away now, obviously. But my dad was a miner, my brother was a miner, my grandfathers on both sides, and then going back 150 years, coal miners. And me and my brother went the same way. I left school in 1979. I went to work underground in the coal mine as an electrician, as an apprentice. So that was the start. But for me, it was very funny because even from the very first day I started underground, in a really hard, dirty, dangerous environment, meeting people who were older than me, who were in their 30s then, for me, I could see that this wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life on day one. Mm-hmm. And the very first day I started there, I had eyes on doing something different, but I didn't quite know what, and I didn't know how that would unfold, and I didn't know what the journey would be like from a 16-year-old underground in the coal mine to then how my life would pan out over the years.
You've had a very interesting life though, haven't you?
But
You've been a grafter.
yeah, I have. I've worked hard, 80, 100-hour weeks. Haven't been unfamiliar territory to me. Certainly for many years in the 1990s and the early 2000s, that was my life. From one week to the next, it was just
How did you
work.
cope with that?
There was a reason for that, because when I left the mines, I went to work. 7 years later, I went to work in an office in Cardiff, selling insurance and mortgages and pensions for a Canadian insurance company. And suddenly my eyes were opened to a whole bigger world. It wasn't just the Rhondda Valley in South Wales and surrounded by miners and people who all lived in houses that looked like mine. Suddenly I was working and dealing with people who saw life on a bigger scale. So they were living in leafy parts of Cardiff. Some of them were earning, for me, big money. But the one thing that convinced me to take the offer of a job in that office was that there was a potted plant in the corner. Because that was, yeah, really, it was a really nice office with carpet and everybody was dressed nicely and there was plants in the office. I was used to an environment that was filthy dirty everywhere you went. And there was no greenery anywhere. It was black. Everything was black. You were black. The ground was black. The air was black. The walls
Your
were black.
lungs would be black?
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, absolutely. So that environment was different. But I think for me early on, what I recognized was that my skills didn't lay necessarily in what I could do in my hands with tools, but how I could communicate to people, how I could get inside what they needed, and then finding ways of providing solutions for what they needed. Little did I know that would form what I would do many decades later, but that was the start of it, really, finding solutions to people's problems, financially at that time.
So life hasn't always been a bed of roses, is it? So working your 100 hours, it was tough. How did that affect sort of relationships outside of the work?
It was tough. When I left the finance industry, I went into work for a finance company. And then I had the opportunity to start a business, a restaurant business in 1989.
So you went from miner to insurance salesperson to restaurateur.
Yeah.
What food were you doing?
Oh, it was on two levels. It was downstairs was your average restaurant, cafe, high street, selling plated fish and chips and peas, or burgers or kebabs even, and pizzas, that kind of thing. And upstairs there was a 24 cover a la carte restaurant with silver service, and it was really nice. But it was the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time. We hit a recession very early on, and ultimately we lost that business.
Was that in the 80s?
It was at the end of the 80s, going into the 90s. And then, having lost that business, I then lost the house we were living in. I watched the car get driven away and get reclaimed. And I went back to work underground for a German contracting firm for a while, which is something I promised myself I would never do, but I had to pay some bills. And it was good money. It was hard graft. And I remember losing 2 stone in 6 weeks, going back to work underground, just working.
Physical work.
Yeah, really physical, hard work. But having lost that business then, and lost my home as a result of that, I then went into a period of 20 years, 15 to 20 years, where the ambition for me was to be broke, not broken in debt, because I had a massive amount of debt behind me. And
do you want to disclose how big it was?
Yeah,
at
it
the time?
was 50 grand, which is a lot of money at that time.
You're talking, what, late 80s, early 90s, £50,000. That would have bought you houses. It was that sort of money, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was big money, and there was, every penny I earned was trying to pay that off until it became impossible, and then we became insolvent. Went into rented accommodation and doing any job then to make ends meet. So I did everything from working in a car factory that manufactured suspension springs, working behind a counter in a Texaco garage selling petrol. I did a debt collection round on a push bike for a Scottish debt company. We used to trace people who owed money to big utilities. The irony of that was I was debt collecting money off people, and I actually owed more money than they did.
Wow.
But I was a debt collector. And there was a kind of a sting in that one for me, because I couldn't pay off my bills. And then I went taxi driving. So once I went into the taxi world informally for a guy who was also an ex-mine, he gave me a chance to work for him. It was easy. I liked driving, but in order to make money, you had to work 80 or 90 hours a week all of the time, day, night. You'd start on a Monday morning with screw contracts, and you'd work through the week, and then late nights until 2 o'clock in the morning, Friday and Saturdays till 4 o'clock in the morning, Sunday night darts teams, Skittles teams. I would do it all because I needed the money. But that became a way of life then. And that's all you know, is chasing the dollar all of the time. But it wasn't to get a house in Spain, or to have a Porsche, or to have a fabulous 5-bedroom house somewhere. It was just to pay the bills.
And to eat and survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You think about the generation we're in now, it's 2026. And if somebody was going through that now, there would be all this support around mental health.
Yeah.
What did you have back then to cope with the loss of everything?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing that I could dig into was my own sense of resilience, and my own sense of not prepared to give up, that tomorrow would always be another better day. I've always been an optimist. I don't know why, because up until that point, I'd never really had much in my life to be optimistic about. I was now on my second marriage, and that marriage became more of an institution than a relationship. It was a shared experience that we'd gone through together, and we stayed together for her children, who were my stepchildren. I had no children from my first marriage. I was really young. But that relationship, or institution as I would look at it, was very much built around that shared experience of lack and just having to work and just paying the bills. I would be more likely to come home from work and find a bailiff in the house than I would ever a friend or a family member. And at one point, I even got quite friendly with the bailiff, with the court bailiff, actually, because when we'd lost everything and I went back to work underground, I had a nice car at the time when we were in that business to start with, and it was reasonably easy to see. It was a Honda Prelude with pop-up light, and it was bright white, and it was a
Your
nice
pride and joy.
Yeah, people would see it. I couldn't afford to insure it. I couldn't afford to tax it. I couldn't afford to MOT it, but I couldn't afford not to go to work. And I would drive it to work and drive it home. And then I got stopped, and then I got stopped again, and I got stopped again. And I ended up in court. And I'll never forget a conversation with a magistrate where they put all of these court cases together. And she looked at me and she said, I don't quite know what to do with you, Mr. Jenkins. You've got 45 points on your licence in one go. Is there anything you want to say? And I explained the story, and she reduced the fine massively. She reduced the ban down to something like 3 months from 18 months. But even then, life was so tough. We were the family that were ripping the sofa open, looking for money to pay for the gas meter, or breaking the gas meter keys in the machine so it would stay on. I ended up living in a council tenement flat surrounded by drug dealers and other really unsavoury characters. It was a really tough time. And the point came where I came home one day and there was a court bailiff there, and my words to him would be, "Hi, Brian, should we have a cuppa?" And we were friendly. And he said, I haven't got time, he said, but unfortunately you've got to come with me today. And that was the day he took me into Cardiff prison for a couple of weeks for non-payment of those fines.
Wow.
So my life was now spiralling down to, it didn't matter what I did, however hard I worked, nothing would ever come good for me.
Can we just go back a minute? Yeah. So you effectively had been busting your ass for as hard as you could.
Yeah.
And it was still never enough, so much so that because you were still unable to make your payments, you ended up in that situation, all because your business had collapsed.
Yeah.
And that was probably what, through no fault of your own, because interest rates went flying up. The world changed in the late 80s, early 90s. Lots of businesses went to the wall. You wouldn't have been the only one. So how did you cope with that?
Shame. I wouldn't walk down the high street, my own high street. I'd go down the back lanes if I needed to go anywhere. I wouldn't want to bump into anybody I'd ever had business dealings with. I felt incredible levels of shame and embarrassment that I was now in this position. And the problem is then, is that you think everybody's talking about you. You think whenever people see you, they're thinking the worst about you. You're a failure, you've done this, or you shouldn't have done that, or all of the armchair experts who knew nothing about my life and knew nothing about what had caused the situation were judging me. They weren't really. And there were some people who would never even mention it. But you always carried that burden of thinking, I wonder what they're thinking right now when you're in a conversation. And it was hard. So when you talk about mental health support, that wasn't even a thing. My background and my culture there, South Wales, as a miner, ex-miner, working in a hard environment, being brought up around hard people, you just brassed it out. You just brazened it out. And for me, it was about, I've got to work my way out of this. I have to work my way out of it. And I guess there would have been support somewhere, but nobody ever said, you need to speak to this person, or you need to think about this, or you need to have this counselling, or it just didn't exist.
So there you are, Brian, the guy you became friends with, ironically. He was in your house more than your friends. Has then popped you in a car and they've whipped you up to Cardiff prison.
Yeah.
You okay to talk about this?
Yeah, no problem.
So what happened? What was it like?
What do I remember? I remember a couple of things. He took me to the police station, first of all, booked me in, and then I got into the van, the prison van, on my own, and he took me to Cardiff prison. The driver took me to Cardiff prison. When I went in, obviously fingerprints, you get your photo taken, you get your things taken off you, and this was for non-payment of fines.
So was it a Category C prison? Was it a low-level prison? Or?
I was there because in them days, they don't do it now, but in those days, I shared a cell with a guy who wasn't paying his poll tax. So he would go in every year at that stage. He would deliberately not pay his poll tax, spend a week or so in Cardiff prison, and that was his poll tax written off. And that's what some people would do then. But I found myself, I was brought up in a really strict Christian home. My father and my mother had great morals, great ethics, great moral compass. And I was here in a prison cell. Some of the listeners might think, well, why was he reading that? But I was reading a book at the time called Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. It's about the McDonald's story. And I was sat or lying on a prison cell bed, And the chaplain came into the prison cell and said, basic conversation, and after a couple of minutes he said, "You don't seem like the kind of guy that should be in here." And I looked at him, and it was a searching question for me, really. And I looked at him, I said, "I'm not, I shouldn't be, but I am. And this is where my life has brought me." And so that was a low point, for sure. You know, I mean, I'd moved home, I'd experienced bereavement in my family with grandparents and that kind of stuff. I'd lost jobs, I'd lost a business, I'd lost a car, all of that. Yeah, marriage, all of that kind of stuff. All of those big life events I bounced back from. And here I was in another one, having to bounce back from that. But it didn't take away my sense of resilience. And that's been, I think for me, in my character, if I have to thank my parents for anything, I thank them for having instilled a character of resilience, of never giving up. Don't ever give up, whatever you do. I've held that and I've carried that all my life. And there have been many other challenges since. But that was definitely a low point.
Would you say that's the lowest point you've ever reached in your life?
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not.
That's pretty remarkable to think that, even just sat here. I've known you for a few years, but not all of this is the first time I've heard it. But there's some big emotions going through me for you at the minute. But
yeah, it's hard. It's hard stuff. And I had stepchildren at the time. They didn't even know I'd gone into prison. We told them that I'd gone to Southeast in Kent to go on a course. That's what they were told. They've never been told, as far as I know, that I did that time. It was only a short time, a week or so, but it was definitely a moment that I'll never forget. The meal they offered me, it was cold potatoes with big black holes in it and cold fish. And that's the plate of food I was given when I walked in there. And then I spent days then making Christmas wrapping paper rolls in the workshop, as that's what I had to do while I was there. But it was a life experience, and one of the things that has stuck with me, and I've carry this with me, and I try and instill this not into just my children, but into the people that work for me as well, is that no experience is wasted. Experience is exactly that. It's experience, and you will either learn from it, or you will turn away from something, or you will grab hold of something and run with it. But take every experience and learn from it. And I did, but not yet. I continued to work. I came out of that. I went into a network marketing business with Amway. Do you remember them? No. Amway? Very big American retail organization. It was like...
I'm not going to lie, I may have to ask my dad about that one.
It was like a legal version of pyramid selling. And you had products and services you could sell, and I would be going door knocking, selling tubs of washing powder.
Wow.
Giving out free samples of a scoop of washing powder to people, right? Selling household goods to people, and you'd create around the people. But the big money that we were told we could earn was when you networked people to work under you, and you were their upliner and that kind of stuff. And I'd go off to massive conferences in Wembley and Birmingham and Cardiff, and you went up the levels. And at one time I had about 120 people under me all over the country. But I still wasn't making any money. The only money I was really making was what I was selling, a little bit of profit on what I was selling. But the value in that has stayed with me all of my life, because the speakers were all incredibly successful people who lived by the power of positive thinking. They had taken on that as a mantra and instilled it into their lives, and it had transformed their lives. And there were books that we would read, and there would be tapes, cassette tapes that we would listen to, and it was all about really positive stuff. People like Zig Ziglar that had written books, and Magic of Thinking Big, and that kind of stuff. And I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. I got a rack of them in the house. I've got a shelf full of them in the office now. But I never ever read the stuff. Half the time I'd have one-liners here and one-liners there. When I went to work for the insurance company, I remember the manager saying to me, "Remember this, son, I will do today what others will not, so I can live tomorrow like others cannot." And this world...
Say that again, I quite like that.
I will do today what others will not, so I can live tomorrow like others cannot. But it wasn't enough to read that stuff. It wasn't enough to buy the book or go to the conference and hear people talking about it. The bit I was missing was you had to live by that all the time. You had to build that into your life, into your thinking. You had to change the way you thought. And that was a long process for me. So I had all of this library of information that I'd heard and I liked and I loved, but I didn't really apply it to my life, right? And then I went on taxi driving, and I went on to these other jobs, these kind of 6 months here, 12 months. I was tracing people, I was repossessing cars, I was doing all sorts of jobs, right? And then eventually I managed to get my own taxi business. And I ran that for a few years in Wales. And then my marriage was falling apart. We'd never seen each other. We were hardly together, no time together. It was a marriage of convenience more than anything else. And eventually she was mishandling the money and I was let, and I was always out driving, and we lost that business.
Oh, no.
I lost that business. And by now we built back up to having our own home again. And I lost that home.
No.
Yeah, I lost it all again. Well, everything.
How do you rebuild from twice? Because like you always say, once is an accident, two is coincidence, three is just recklessness.
Yeah.
How did you build from that? Because let's be very clear,
It changed me.
Let me just be very clear. You are successful now, okay? But that's from the learns of everything that's happened before.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But you went through it once, young, just that wasn't your fault, the 80s. Then you get through it again, you're out working every hour God gives you, but then the money's not there.
There's the one thing balancing, I've always been a risk taker. I've always been one to see an opportunity and position myself to see an opportunity. If your eyes are not open, you're not going to see the view, for sure. And I've always been that person who was give anything a go, give anything a try, but possibly recklessly in the past, whereby it's going to work. I can make this work. It's going to happen.
Stubborn and arrogance, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Partly I'm flawed, for sure. I got many flaws.
It's difficult to balance confidence, grit and arrogance, because you've got that thing you don't want to walk down the street and feel shame again. You've got that thing where you can't possibly fail again because the pain was so much that it put you into a spiral that put you into Cardiff prison. And here you are now going through it again.
Yeah.
Was this around the time you had an accident as well?
No, that was 1989.
When you had your big accident?
Yeah. It was when I met my second wife. Christmas party season, going from one office party to another. We met working in the same company, albeit 150 miles apart. Effectively, I burnt the candle at both ends. If I could tell my kids, give my kids one lesson, is you're going to do it, but don't drive. Don't pretend that you're going to stay awake, because I fell asleep at the wheel after hours and hours of driving through the night and went head on into a school minibus on its way to pick up the kids, fortunately, not with the kids in the van. But I was unconscious, I was cut out, I broke my femur, I broke my nose, severed nerves in different parts of my face and in my mouth. That's why I walk with a limp. But I tell you this much, I use that story as an analogy now of how we meet people all of the time, whether it's people we take on with work, or it's the people that we look after, the people, the families of the people that we deal with, whatever level that we are in that relationship with people. I think it's really important for everybody to know this. We all walk with a limp. Whether you can see it or not is another thing. People see me hobbling along, and the older I get and the worse my arthritis in my knees and the shorter my right leg becomes to my left one, which is what's happening to me, I walk with a worse limp. If I'm tired, I walk with a worse limp. If I go out for a day shopping, I will limp back worse than I went out. But life will bring curveballs. Life will bring experiences. Life will bring challenges. Life will bring what we perceive as failures or lessons, and we will all learn from that, but we will all walk with a limp. It will affect us in one way or another. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's grounding. I think
it's your battle scars, isn't it?
Yeah, it's grounding, Rich, because it keeps you in a place where whatever we deem to be success, and I don't see success as being loads of money. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I don't see it as having a Ferrari in the drive and a 6-bedroom house on looking over the coast. That's great, that's lovely, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of that. For me, success is about doing what makes you happy, living in a way that makes you happy, with the people that you're happy to be, with your family, with your friends. Having an opportunity to leave a legacy and to transform people's lives in a positive way and affect people's lives where you uplift them rather than grind them down as you're passing through. I want everybody I meet, I want to leave them in a better place having met me than before, after. I want them to feel better having been around me than they did at the beginning.
Listen, I can say this for certain, and it's genuinely with my hand on my heart. The day that I first met you, I had that feeling, and ever since, we've gone on to work together, play pool together.
Yeah.
Someone I would call a friend now in my life.
Yeah, sure.
And your story is definitely one that needed to be told. Whether this is the right place or not, it's too late, you've told it.
Yeah, it's fine.
But this is real. This is somebody who I admire for all the things that have gone wrong in your life, through your fault or not your fault. Okay, I absolutely admire you because you've picked yourself up every single time with your limping leg and you've got on with it, right?
Yeah.
And that grit, that drive, that determination, and that positivity, if only one person watching this today gets that, then it's all been worth it, my friend.
Oh, 100%.
Now listen, we're not going to leave it as 2 marriages down and 2 businesses gone. Okay, we're not stopping there because life has got better for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got a beautiful daughter in Charlotte. You've remarried.
We're not married.
Oh,
but
partnered.
together.
Sorry,
Yeah.
partnered. Yeah, don't do a 3rd time, Struth. Bad luck. Although your partner probably saying, don't say that. I want him to marry me. You've got a beautiful daughter. You've got a business now that's got such a big heart in the centre of it. Your team are phenomenal. You don't just go out and to people in their homes for 10 minutes. You give them the time that they need. And you offer a range of different services at Carers Break. And for that, you're right across the county as well. And I will say to you, well done. Genuinely, well done.
Thank you.
I do mean that. To think that if most of the world out there, because you alluded to your age being 83, wasn't it? No, 63. You alluded to your age, but at 63, it might have taken you a little bit longer. But my friend, you've done it. You're there. Your happiness comes in more than money. It comes in the satisfaction that you've made someone else happy.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in, doing an episode of Owners Off Script.
You're welcome.
Absolutely phenomenal.
You've only had half of it.
Tell you what, let's get you back for part 2.
Oh,
when we
happy
do
with
series 2,
Yeah.
we'll get you back and we'll do it all over again.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much for watching another edition of Owners Off Script. What a legend, absolute and phenomenal guy. If you want to find out more about some of the other guests that I've met, then please go to rewindradio.co.uk, check out the page, Owners Off Script. You can also download this from all your favourite podcast places. Just remember to like, love, review and share, and that would be massively appreciated. Thank you very much, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Owners Off Script. Real owners, real conversations. Supported by Soundgeek.